Only mode.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone, and good evening, in case we have anyone from Europe. My name is Jennifer Gill, and I'm the Director of Global Product Marketing at Zerto. And today we have a great webinar with three of our fantastic healthcare customers, and they're going to talk about how they use Zerto to deliver BCDR for their organization. So agenda, so I'll go over who the speakers are, and then we'll turn it over to the three customers to each talk about their organizations. So we have representatives from Long-Term Care Group, NxStage Medical, and Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic. We have a few questions that we'll ask, and then we'll take your questions and tell you how you can learn more. To ask questions, for the panel that showed up on the right-hand side of my screen, I hope it showed up on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see there's a place where you can type in questions. So if you type them in there, we will be sure to answer them throughout the webinar. So first we have Duane Dumont. He's the Vice President of IT at NxStage Medical. He has over 22 years of experience managing IT for medical device and manufacturing industries, and he has responsibility for their IT organization globally across 5 sites, 1 DR site, all IT development. They take a mobile-first approach, and he's responsible for all cloud initiatives as well. So Duane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to it.
So we also have Mike Gelhar, Systems Engineer with the Long-Term Care Group. He is responsible for managing and architecting the virtual environment, including provisioning, tuning, and availability. He has over 15 years of IT experience across a myriad of topics, including servers, storage, and virtualization. And you can see he has some heavy VMware certifications there. So Mike, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And then we have Todd Pappas, Systems Engineer at Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic. He has over 20 years of experience in IT, and previously he was at the Coca-Cola Bottling Company. He's responsible for management, disaster recovery, and performance of the infrastructure. And he's been a storage administrator, a virtualization administrator, also works with Cisco UCS, and he has networking responsibilities and experience as well. Todd, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I am going to turn it over to Mike. He'll talk about his organization and his challenges with DR.
All right, thank you, Jen. Yeah, so Long-Term Care Group, we're based here in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. We are a provider of business processing outsourced to the insurance industry, focusing on long-term care insurance specifically. We've got between 50 and 60 customers. All of them are in the top 10 carriers in the long-term care space, so a lot of the primary companies are our customers, which puts a little pressure on us to perform and deliver, which is a good thing. It drives innovation. So as a company, we provide support for processing and underwriting of insurance claims. We represent the insurers, and we go to market in order to provide value for those customers. The environment that we're working with here, we're highly virtualized. Initially, we virtualized like most everybody did for the purpose of hardware consolidation, then also with a goal of doing better disaster recovery. Previously, before we had Zerto, we had a disaster recovery tool that was based on array-based replication. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges we had with that. And currently, we're generally hovering about 1,000 virtual machines, give or take, between when they're created and torn back down. But overall, we're roughly 90% virtualized here at LTCG. Currently, with Zerto, we're protecting about 30 virtual machines, which translates to roughly 16 terabyte of data. And so you might say, well, why do you have 1,000 virtual machines, but you only got 30 protected? We actually just came out of a company separation. And most of our replication licenses were tied up with separating out the company and the movement of workload between data centers. So we're now just in a retooling stage of getting those, our production virtual machines covered up again with disaster recovery using Zerto. So we're kind of in a rebuild stage, and we expect to get to over 100 virtual machines and about 150 terabyte of production data we'll be replicating between 2 data centers. With our applications, we're protecting imaging applications for various imaging platforms, financial records, web servers, a lot of Microsoft SQL. All of our virtual SQL server, or I should say all of our production SQL servers, we do run in a VMware environment, and we're protecting those with Zerto. And then we've got some other custom mission critical applications that we cover as well. You can go to the next slide. There we go. Yeah, so challenges that we have with disaster recovery and BC and DR. Initially, when we were working with the array-based SRM, we had some challenges with that all ended up with a lot of extra amounts of effort and preparation time that went into preparing for a disaster recovery test, and all the work that we had to do to get a virtual machine to the point where we could even perform a disaster recovery test on it. Primarily what we found is in our environment where we're running a NetApp SAN SRM, and the way that it worked only could manage LUNs as long as all of those LUNs were on a single controller. And in our environment, we had already separated LUNs across multiple controllers, so we would have to go through a process of unmapping LUNs, remapping it, moving them over to another controller, and going through a lot of manual steps that involved a lot of downtime to prepare those virtual machines to do that. And the reason that we needed the array-based replication was so that we would have the failback abilities and just some of the other features that the software or the vSphere replication didn't offer. So in order to prepare, we'd have to literally take a couple of administrators, we'd have to plan, and it would take a couple of weeks in order to get an application prepared for a recovery test. We'd have to go through the environment, identifying LUNs, getting controller info, doing all of the remapping, and we'd have to take outages on those servers to be able to do that, and that was just becoming a lot of work, and it was a lot of interruption to the business. So the application owners, they would say, how come we have to take this down? Why do we have to do this? So just a lot of different pain points that we were having there. And then in addition to that, we'd have to, after taking those outages and those maintenance windows, then we'd have to actually do the disaster recovery test. So we'd have people having to work, a couple weekends in order just to get that done. And if you're like me, you don't like working more weekends than you have to. So anytime we can avoid that is a good thing. And at the same time, while all of that was happening, more of our customers are starting to request more frequent disaster recovery tests, and we have to provide the findings of those recovery tests to them. So as we're ramping up more DR testing, and with the complexity, we had to find a different solution for that. So what we ended up finding, we ran into Zerto at a VMworld and started a nice conversation, and we found out that that tool was something that would really work well for us. We found that with being software-based, it eliminated a lot of the hardware dependencies that that we were working with SRM. So in addition to a substantial reduction in preparation time, we were able to also eliminate a lot of application outages in order to prepare for disaster recovery. And we found that it was just very simple to use. Coming from a complex SRM environment, going into Zerto, literally you can protect a virtual machine with a couple clicks, and then within minutes or hours, depending on the size of the virtual machine, you've got it replicated to a point where it's now ready for recovery. So that was a major improvement for us. And in addition to the simplicity then too, it also improved our SLA, where now we were able to reduce that SLA for an RPO from 15 minutes at a minimum before to well under that now, where we've got applications that are reporting RPOs of under a minute. And one of the other primary areas that Zerto was a major help for us was what I mentioned just a minute ago, was where we use it to migrate workloads between data centers. So we were able to do full migrations of workloads from one data center to another. And we also will use it to do clones of machines if we want to do some other kind of testing. We can use some of the clone features there. So those are some very major and impactful benefits that we picked up by implementing Zerto.
Great, thanks, Mike. Quick question. Someone asked what imaging app you're using, as people might want to know which one it is, if you're comfortable sharing it. I won't make you, of course, if you don't want to.
That's not a problem. Yeah, so what we have for our images that we use is basically it's a system called Case 360, and it's a program that we use for capturing all of the applications that get scanned in to the environment. So we've got applications that are saved in TIFF format, and roughly about 14 terabyte of images that we're managing with that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I believe we are on to Duane next. So,
hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Just want to do a quick safe harbor. We are NxStage is a public company. I'm going to talk for a second about revenues and things like that. Please do all of your trading based on our reports on our investor relations site on nxstage.com. Go ahead. So NxStage Medical, we make a primary claim to fame is in-home hemodialysis equipment. So people with end-stage renal disease, kidney failure, we make a device that they can train in center and then go home with it. We also have a device that's used in acute in-center operations as well. We have roughly 3,500 full-time employees based all around the world: Italy, Germany, Mexico, UK, and our Canada and the US. Now, Lawrence, Mass is our headquarters. About 300 million in revenue. Our market cap fluctuates, obviously. It's about 1.1 billion right now. Next slide. So we have three primary data centers. Marlborough, Mass is our DR site. Lawrence is our primary data center here. And Mexico, we have another data center for our manufacturing operations. Applications protected. IFS is our ERP system that has an Oracle backend. Agile is also made by Oracle. Well, is made by Oracle. IFS is not made by Oracle. We do have SQL Server databases, file share. Our primary storage is Dell Compellent. We have a couple of old EMC Clarions, and we have an EMC VNX as well. Around 70 terabytes total in all locations. Go ahead. So the problems that we had, we were using mirror view initially to move data back and forth, and it was too slow. Even trying to provide a disaster recovery scenario that was testable was difficult with mirror view. And of course you had to have the same hardware at both sites, all that sort of stuff, and in order to upgrade to EMC's platform that allowed you to replicate to different sites, you had to put in new hardware and all that sort of stuff. So real problem with doing a hardware replication there. We had resources in Massachusetts and Mexico that were both underutilized. We were looking for something that would not require an application re-architecture, obviously, and wanted to find something that would allow us to move from a primary data center to a backup data center and use resources in both, potentially for production environments. Go ahead to the next slide. So what we realized right away was how simple it was. I believe Mike, said it's a couple of clicks and you have a new VM replicating and that sort of thing. But just the installation, I think it took a couple of hours total for the installation of the product and to get it working. management, incredibly simple, and in one pane, you can see everything. The journaling capability is very helpful, as it says on the slide, but to be able to pick a point to go back to is awesome. And obviously multi-site support in one interface. So bidirectional replication enables us to use resources at different sites. So we can go, let's say we have a test database that we want to use in our DR site, for instance. We can make that a primary and replicate back to our backup database, which would be actually our primary data center, to utilize the compute cycles on that platform. So, really neat that you can use both sides to get better utilization out of your hardware.
So, Duane, I remember when we had presented one time together, you mentioned the low impact of installation. Because we get questions on, what's the impact of the Zerto infrastructure on production? So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Are you talking as far as compute?
Yeah, like the
Yeah, it's negligible. You barely realize that it's running, from a compute cycle, and from a replication cycle. Compared to mirror view, I think we cut our bandwidth requirements, in half or more. Because it would just peg out the pipe between the two sites. But Zerto has a replication technology that maybe one of your engineers could talk about a little bit better than I can, but allows us to sort of normalize our traffic across our WAN. So
yeah.
two different things that it helped us with.
Yeah, awesome. No, we can talk about the tech bits for sure, but I think people really want to hear about the impact to your organization. That was perfect.
Yep.
Okay, and so next is Todd with Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon. I've been at the Farm Workers for probably going on 5 years. The Farm Workers Clinic, we have 30 clinics spread out through the Pacific Northwest. We're mainly outpatients. We are a patient-centered medical home level 4 organization. We are nonprofit, and we are very diversified. Not only do we provide medical for our patients, but we pretty much cover the whole gamut of dental care, behavioral care. We have pharmacies. We have community health services, nutritional services. So very diverse organization. It requires a lot of different applications. Currently, we are also in the midst of changing our EHR to Epic to kind of consolidate all these discrete applications we need to run the business. Next slide, please. Talking about our data center, we are 99% virtualized. We do have some discrete HVUX and AIX servers that unfortunately we can't virtualize yet, but once Epic's rolled out, we'll have everything kind of consolidated and tied together. We have 2 data centers. We have our primary data center in Toppenish, Washington, and we have a DR site in Yakima. We're all MPLS with Metro Ethernet. We currently protect about 45 VMs. I would say probably about 10 terabytes of data. We have a lot of discrete applications and internal utilities and management systems. Currently, we use Cisco Nexus and EMC Clarion, EMC VNX. We do all our we use Avamar for our backups. And currently we're also using OTV to our DR site, so we transport all our layer 2 over layer 3, which has helped us immensely. And we do have a long-gauge pipe between the main data center and the DR site. I will mention this, that when I first came onto the organization, we were using line-of-sight microwave through a provider, and it was pretty much touch and go. Our DR capabilities consisted of log shipping and ENC Clarion mirror view, which was very cumbersome. Next slide, please. So with mirror view, it was very cumbersome. We had tons of documentation. It was a manual failover. It wasn't always consistent. As some of the other panelists have mentioned, it required a lot of bandwidth. Same thing for log shipping. It was very cumbersome. There was no automation involved, and it took a long time. Our RTO was probably at least 4 hours. Next slide, please. We actually found Zerto. We did a lot of digging, a lot of Googling, and it fit the bill perfectly because one thing about Zerto is that it's one-stop shopping. You have one window, it's in your hypervisor. It takes no time at all to set up. Once it's set up, when you have to fail over, it's literally, I haven't really counted the clicks, but I think it's 6 clicks to fail over. Our RPOs are outstanding. I would think the RPO is probably 6 seconds. I looked at it this morning. To fail over our current EMR, and our current EMR is IC chart, we can fail that over in about 15 minutes. We have done the tests on all of our major systems, and we've had excellent results with the Zerto. I will also mention with Zerto that we have 2 discrete vCenters, a vCenter at the DR, a vCenter at the data center, and we also use Zerto to move VMs back and forth between vCenters, so we don't have to copy VMDKs and whatnot. And that feature is working very, very well for us. If we have to test, we can shuffle VMs back and forth between 2 discrete vCenter installations. Another thing that Zerto provides for us is the kind of the DVR capability that we really didn't have with mirror view. We can go back or forward. We keep 24 hours of journaling just to kind of protect us against corruption. And as I said before, we've tested all our major systems. Once our Epic deployment is through, we will be testing the entire Epic system, and once we're satisfied with that, we're going to do an entire organization failover the entire data center. So I imagine we'll be going from 45 VMs probably to 60, 65 by the end of August. Next slide, please.
I actually think that is it,
it
for you. But just to share with everyone on the webinar, Todd, how long have you been using Zerto?
We've been using Zerto for 2 years.
Okay.
And it's actually one of those products that it does what's advertised, basically. We've been very, very satisfied with the product. It's lived up to our expectations, and it's made our DR so much more easier. And it's a lot easier to administrate. So.
Yeah, I actually get that comment a lot on the CSATs. So I run our reference program, and so I speak with all our customers, which is why I know when we went to do a healthcare webinar to talk with Mike, Duane, and Todd. And that's the most common comment I get is your marketing materials and what your product actually delivers matches. And it's unfortunate, but that's not always true of IT products. Duane, how long have you been using Zerto at NxStage?
about the same 2 years, and we have about the same performances as Mike and Todd. You know, it's pretty incredible to be able to fail over and see a transaction that happened, you know, seconds ago on the other site. So it's pretty neat, and pretty near impossible with what we had before. So it's been a fantastic product for us as well.
Awesome. And then Mike, how long have you been using Zerto?
Yeah, I think we're in our 3rd year now. We've from the time that we originally purchased, we've renewed a license to keep that going. We've added more licensing, so we continue to utilize this as our primary and only way for doing virtual machine replication. You know, and again, talking about just the simplicity of it, you know, one of the other advantages that we've had here is it's been easy to train junior administrators on how to use Zerto to protect virtual machines, where SRM just seemed a little bit more complicated for us. It was a lot more maintenance involved, and you know, Java just took that care of feeding. And with Zerto, you know, this sounds like, you know, we're just lavishing on Zerto. You know, in reality, that's been my experience, is that in order to keep a virtual machine protected, you can go ahead and you can still make changes. You can add drives, change configuration, and you don't have to go back and tweak the DR plan because you changed something. You know, everything is laid out nice and easy. You can see the performance. You can get an idea of what the bandwidth is being used. So it really works out really well for a lot of functions. And I think one of the things too for us is we found that in addition to just replication, you know, I mentioned that we did the data center migration using that, which is one of the reasons that when we first purchased Zerto, it was one of the deciding factors, is being able to use that as a migration tool, to be able to do not only just disaster recovery but disaster avoidance by being able to take that workload and move it simply between different data centers. So it's been a huge advantage for us.
Great. And a question came in from the attendees, and Mike, I'll start with you since you appear to be the veteran user. What was the biggest hurdle in implementing?
Okay, the biggest hurdle in implementing. Well, after we got past the hurdle of getting the funding approved, which for us is usually the stickiest part for any expense. You know, we did a POC, so we were just using the eval software for that. The POC went really well because there's a very nice eval guide that Zerto provides that walks you through some of the different scenarios. So, you know, once you've put your hour or two into getting the application installed, then it lays out some scenarios for you to do a test. So you can, you know, right away you're kind of getting a mini training in a way, because it's, you know, step by step saying here's what you can do. As far as any hurdles, though, for getting it implemented, I don't really recall any major issues. It was really, at that point, you know, coming from where we were, it was an answer to a lot of issues that we had. You know, we didn't have to do any architecture changes. We didn't have to do any of the LUN remapping that we were accustomed to. We didn't need to provide any additional hardware to be able to run it. You know, the resources that are required are very minimal. You know, you just need a couple Windows servers, and then to be able to deploy some virtual appliances, and then you're covered. So no real major or even minor hurdles to implementing that I can recall.
You know, this is Duane. I'll second that. The hurdles weren't with you know, installation or any of the sort of technical pieces that go along with this. Our hurdles were operational, right? Well, now we have a lot more option to do what we need. So it was, you know, which VMs are going to stay here, what's going to go, you know, to XYZ. It was more an operation around what's going to get us the biggest bang for our buck as far as performance goes. So, and then also just managing the bandwidth and that sort of thing, which was actually went in the opposite direction for us. We used less we have ramped up more since then, but it's it was more of an operational thing for us instead of a technical issue.
Great. And Todd, anything to add?
We didn't have the ease of installation was wonderful. I can't think of any. The only hurdle that, and I don't know if it was really a hurdle, but you have to be aware of your storage requirements, especially with change rates, if you're going to be journaling for any amount of time. So just be aware to keep track of your change rates and plan accordingly with the storage at your DR side. But and that was kind of minor. That's just planning. But I can't think of any showstoppers or any big challenges with Zerto products.
Yeah, that's a good comment about the storage, because I know when we first implemented, we were trying to cram as much DR coverage as we could into our lower end or some of our near retirement hardware, and so a lot of the same rules that you're going to apply to how you run your workloads are still going to apply, because when we did a recovery test of, say I know we tried to do like half a dozen SQL servers on a couple of SATA-based data stores, and performance is what you'd expect it to be at that point. But the fact that it was still able to do the recovery on that, I think, was pretty remarkable. But then you can't expect performance to just magically appear based on the fact that it's being recovered. But so like you said, the planning, you still have to do that. You still have to plan the amount of bandwidth that you're going to need. Being able to cap the bandwidth is a huge, nice feature, especially with the time of day, because depending on when you've got different business requirements, you can have a schedule to increase or lower the amount of bandwidth that's able to be used, so that you're not impacting any other production workload.
Yeah, that's a great point on the throttling. And then also, Zerto does provide tools to size the journal and to size the WAN usage appropriately to make sure that you're able to achieve your RPOs and RTOs. So they're just kind of simple spreadsheets. You plug in the numbers, it spits out what you need to have. So we want to help you make sure you size it appropriately, because we want to deliver the right service levels for you. So we will continue to take questions. Let's see what other slides I have. Oh, so I just wanted to go over the architecture very quickly. So you can see that there's a Zerto Virtual Manager, and that plugs right into vCenter, or as of next week, early May, we're going to be supporting Microsoft as well, so it'll be a plug-in to SCVMM. There's a Zerto Virtual Replication appliance that installs on each host within the environment, whether it's ESXi or Hyper-V. As you heard from the panelists, so very low impact in terms of installation and taking away compute resources, taking away bandwidth resources, very, very low impact. And it's a seamless installation, so it'll install into your existing infrastructure. And I think Mike had mentioned, no changing of ones, we don't have to do any mapping or anything like that. We also, as Mike had on this as well, the compression and throttling, so you can set certain bandwidth usage like 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. for business hours, and then change it from 6 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. when there might not be as many people on the network, so it's not as big of an issue. And then lastly, so the journal, and so you heard Todd mention that they do 24 hours, so it's 1 hour up to 5 days, so you can do as little as an hour, or you can do the full 5 days, and that provides you many, many points that you can fail back to. So if there was a logical failure, a corruption, something else that happened, you're able to roll back the environment to that point in time. So the unit of protection is a virtual protection group. So this is a group of VMs that makes up an application. So we put those together in a group with right order fidelity and to ensure consistency. So we want to make sure all the VMs are in the same state so that they can be recovered. What that also enables is for you to take advantage of some of the neat features within VMware and Hyper-V. So to use things like DRS or vMotion, and you heard from the mapping of VMs to specific ones. Once you move a VM around, now you have to update your DR plan. as all three of the panelists mentioned, I believe. So with Zerto, because it's in the hypervisor, it knows when you're moving things around, so your BCDR plan will remain as you have created it. So you don't have to continue to make updates. It's kind of, I heard yesterday one of our SEs in a meeting, he says, set it and forget it. And that's basically how it works. You set it up, and unless you need to add a VM to a VPG, which you will have to go in and update the software, any other changes in terms of moving VMs around, we're going to adapt. So the automation, I think Todd said it was 6 clicks. Actually, I think I'm going to show that Todd is lying, and it's 5. So to fail over, you can see the main user interface. You see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's your failover button. So it's set to test when it's white. When you slide it to live, so you're doing a production failover, it turns red to let you know, okay, you're really doing a failover now. You can select the VPGs you want to fail over, so you can check that top box all the way to the left, or select a specific virtual protection group. And then next. And then you go to execution parameters. So one of the neat features of Zerto is commit before rollback. So I hear from customers like, look, we're okay failing over, but what if the failover doesn't work properly and then production is down, and then we're kind of in a tough spot with nothing being up and running. With Zerto, you're able to delay the shutdown of production. So you can say, you know what, I'm going to fail over, but don't fully commit for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the time is. So you can go back and look and say, okay, I see on my recovery site, everything's working just as planned, so now I'll go ahead and shut down production. So that's what that screen will allow you to do. Then you click next and then start failover. And that's the whole process. So, excuse me, you can see Zerto is award-winning. We actually won Best of Show at VMworld right out of the gate in August of 2011. That was when we announced our first version. And since then, we've won many other awards, including Best of Show at VMworld and EMEA just this past fall. Innovative, so we're looking to add new hypervisors. We also support Amazon if you want to use that for backup. And then next month, we'll also have support for Amazon for DR as well. Very, very simple. And actually, I'm going to pose another question to the panelists around how simple Zerto is, because everyone says that they're easy to use. No one says that they're difficult. So maybe just a couple more examples on how Zerto's been able to simplify things in their environment. Very reliable. The non-disruptive disaster recovery testing will give you that confidence as well. So you can execute a disaster recovery test at any time. It's completely non-disruptive. Replication is still taking place. And if the off chance during your DR test you need to execute a failover, you can stop the test and then do a real production failover. And it's highly scalable. So environments are growing. They're not shrinking. And Zerto recognizes that. So with that VRA on each ESX host or Hyper-V host, just as you add another host, you just install another virtual replication appliance. So it's all software solution, making it very easy to scale and very easy to manage. So I don't know who to start with. I don't know if anyone has a simplicity story in particular that they would like to share. Mike, can I start with you?
Sure. I think one thing that is, I think this still qualifies as a simple thing, but a lot of times with applications like this, licensing is sometimes tricky to manage. And in our experience, licensing has been another area where it's been very simple and straightforward. You just purchase the number of licenses that you need for how many virtual machines you want to protect, and it doesn't matter how many hosts that you're running those on. So you can have as many hosts as you need, as many sites as you need. So based on if you've got 2 data centers or 5 data centers, that doesn't matter. It just matters how many virtual machines you're going to protect. So you can always protect that maximum number based on your licensing, and then as your needs change, if you want to pull some, you'd say you've been replicating one, but you no longer need that, you can retire that one and then apply that license to something else. So you can slide that licensing around and keep it fluid with your business requirements.
Yeah, that counts as simple for sure. Duane or Todd, anything to add?
Sure. This is Duane. I'll go with it's hardware agnostic. You know what I mean? You don't have to plan to have the same hardware in your target as your primary and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's absolutely great. I don't know anybody that has more than one site that has the exact same hardware in each site. So from a simplicity standpoint, that was the easiest thing for me. It simplified my life pretty greatly. The second thing is, you know, just the testing a failover is so easy. And, you know, I think it was Mike that was telling us that, you know, it saves weekends, you know. I experienced the same effect on our side. We're able to test, for one thing, and reliably test and put it in our, you know, disaster recovery plan for SOX compliance and all that sort of stuff. So it's really been fantastic for NxStage.
Great. Todd, anything for you?
Yeah, I would say that administrative overhead is kind of kept at a minimum because all of our staff, our technical staff, are in vCenter every day, and it's just, you know, several tabs over to get into the Zerto product and monitor it, everything at a glance. You know, you have the stoplight presentation, which makes it pretty easy. So administratively, it has some low overhead. It's very accessible. It's in the hypervisor. You don't need to load, you know, separate applications to manage this product. It's kind of one pane of glass. As I said before, one-stop shopping. It's embedded in your hypervisor, so it's easy to get to, and for us, it's been easy to manage and monitor.
Okay, great. And the only other thing I would add, since Duane mentioned storage agnostic, would be that we also support different versions of VMware. So if you have like vSphere 4 on one site and 5 on another, we can replicate between those sites still because we're able to support that environment. I know it's really tough to really update the entire environment and get every single ESX host, even across sites, on the same version of VMware vSphere. So we support that. So to give you a little bit more flexibility. Oh, what are you doing, Duane?
Actually, this is Mike, and what we actually did is we actually had a situation where we had to do a live failover from a data center in Florida to Minnesota, and in that case we did a failover from a 4.1 host, so we had some really old stuff there, up to I think a 5.5. So even between those versions, we were able to still move that same workload across. So it was a good win, especially in that case when it was a live situation where we needed to move some servers because of an outage, and we were able to keep that application running.
Perfect. All right, so we don't have any other questions from the audience, so thank you for staying with us for 45 minutes. Duane, Todd, and Mike, thank you so much for all your input. I know that's really helpful, and people want to hear from customers on how they're using it. So thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome.
Very welcome.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, thank you for joining us. This is going to conclude our webinar, and have a great day.
You too.